Now, unlike the UNC, who they should win, everyone expects them to win, they'll be favored, Duke has a chance to shock the world tomorrow. And by the way, it would hurt the ACC because Miami at this point is the representative at the upper echelon that is carrying the flag for the Atlantic Coast Conference, but that shouldn't matter to Duke. Duke has a chance to shock the world tomorrow at noon in Miami. This one has all of the ingredients for an upset. Has all the ingredients for an upset. A super motivated Duke team. Why? Because their coach used to be the head coach of Miami, and although Manny Diaz would never say it, and I even tried to lure him into it last week, he would never say it, there has to be a circle on his calendar for this one. The way it ended, the way he was treated, the way all of that happened at the end of the Miami run for him as head coach. He's going in there with Duke with all intention of not, but I don't know how you don't. His mind is on revenge. His mind is on winning the breakup. His mind is on, you let me go? Well, watch this. Miami's one of the top 5 teams in the country right now. Duke's going in there with a hunting mentality because they're trying to do it for their coach. Also, Duke had a brutal loss last week. That SMU game, they won the turnover battle 6-0, and I can only imagine that in the history of major college football, if you win the turnover battle 6-0, you had to be like 900,000-0 until Duke lost to SMU last week. That will laser focus you for a week. For that practice, for those film sessions, you are laser focused if you're Duke this week. From Miami's perspective, again, all the ingredients for an upset. Miami, and again, it's against what everybody would say. It's against your best judgment, your conscious thought. Miami probably thinks they already made an undefeated season happen.
Yeah, the rest of their schedule is not very tough.
They're up to this point. They're undefeated. Obviously, escaped a few close ones, but they're undefeated. They have Duke, Georgia Tech, Wake Forest, and Syracuse. Not exactly the biggest football brand names in the ACC. Miami's probably thinking like, whew, good thing we escaped Virginia Tech because now we're home free. That's usually not the best idea of mental mindset heading into a game. The other thing that usually happens in big-time upsets is the underdog gets their hands on the ball on defense. They force turnovers. They're the great equalizers, right? A turnover in the red zone for Miami, especially a pick 6 or a scoop and score 6, becomes a 14-point swing with only one elite play, right? Miami might win 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 plays in a row to get down to the 7-yard line. A pick 6 is just one play you win, and you go from down 7-0 to up 7-0. 14-point swing. Duke's defense gets their hands on the ball. 6 turnovers, I mentioned, last week against SMU, which helps this stat. They forced the second most turnovers in the country. 9 interceptions, 10 fumble recoveries. Second most of any team in FBS football. They are third best in the country in turnover margin. So on average, they turn the ball over. Their offense turns the ball over 1.5 times less than their opponents turn the ball over to their defense. That's massive. There's a reason why every coach in the history of the world, key to the game, we got to protect the football, got to get our hands on it on defense. Because it's true. It's not exactly insightful, but it's true. So if Duke is going to pull off the upset, they're going to have to get to Cam Ward in some way. Interceptions, maybe it's a catch and somebody else fumbles. They're going to have to get the ball and get Cam Ward off the field. He's the Heisman contending quarterback for Miami. And then the last thing here, and I think most people will agree with me, especially if you've been around the ACC for a while. A noon Saturday game in Miami, not the atmosphere that you'd think it would be. South Florida, even in November, a little toasty midday.
Yeah.
A little toasty.
Feels
so
nice.
Like it's not, the coolest thing to do in Miami, I guess. That's kind of always the problem with like baseball in Florida is everybody goes to the Pirates games because it's cold in Pittsburgh. Like, you got something to do. In Miami, you go to the beach, you can go to the club, you could go here, you could go there, and that's why no one goes to baseball games. Kind of Saturday at noon, they don't fill up the stadium all the way. It's that Miami is very I'm trying not to be like super stereotypical. They're very like who do you know, right? You're trying to get into the club, who do you know? Well, I doubt Duke is the one that everyone's like, ooh, got to make it to the Duke game. It's not exactly the like Gucci belt of college football teams.
Mm-hmm.
You play Florida State, you play Florida, you play some of these other teams. It's like, oh, it's a status symbol. I've got great seats to the Florida State game, even if they stink. Duke, I don't know. We'll see next week. I'm just telling you, the Miami fan base is not an every week fan base. They're a big game, night game fan base. Now, having said all of that, those are the ingredients for the upset, right? You got all the ingredients. You still need to be able to cook the meal, right? You can have all the ingredients. You leave it in the oven for 10 minutes too long. That meal is ruined anyway, right? You can have all the ingredients. You still have to chef that bad boy up. Miami is really good. Cam Ward is really good. So all of those ingredients add up to nothing if you don't play the best game you've played all year. The effort you put out there, particularly on offense against SMU, gets you blown out against Miami. You get down 20-0 like you did against UNC, Miami does not let you come back into that game. So, yeah, you have all the ingredients. You have an opportunity. That's all it is. It's the ingredients and an opportunity to shock the world on a noon Saturday game down there in South Florida.
By the way, Miami, for much of the last month, basically, 4 games they've played, they've been playing with fire a little bit.
Oh,
I know this past Sunday they beat Florida State 36-14. We discussed already how Florida State stinks. But they beat Louisville on the road 52-45.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they let Louisville hang around. Louisville actually had their chances to win that game. They went on the road to Cal and beat Cal by 39-38. Mm-hmm. They gave up 38 points to Cal for a team that can't score. They gave up 38 points to Cal, and they beat Virginia Tech 38-34.
Some would argue Virginia Tech beat them in that game, and the refs gave it back to them on that.
There's also that, too. Exactly. So, like, Miami has been, like, a couple of weird plays away from losing games. Like, they're right there from falling apart.
For the picking on, would you say?
Yeah. It's not out of the realm of possibility that if Duke's defense showed up, like you mentioned, and can slow down Cam Ward a bit, Miami's defense hasn't really been stopping people much all this year. Well, congrats. You beat Florida 41-17. Florida's not good. You beat FAMU 56-9. You beat Ball State. Wow.
But I will add this. The Cal game, right? 39-38. Everybody was very nervous about that one. Cal got a turnover on downs at midfield, turned it into a touchdown.
Yep.
Cal got an interception return for a touchdown. That's usually the way those games become much closer than it feels like they should. Duke has to do it. You have to get your hands on the ball. Have to. And you have to play better offensively than you've been playing. Because, as you mentioned, all those games that were very close, Virginia Tech scored 34, Cal scored 38, Louisville scored 45. Duke's offense isn't putting up those kinds of numbers very often, so they're going to have to score a bit more because even good defenses, Cal is a good defense. Miami can score against. Their offense and Cam Ward, they're good. Some Panther fans will be watching this Duke Miami Hurricanes game going like, oh, no, I'm not a Duke fan. No, I don't like Miami. Well, then what are you watching this game for? I want to see if Cam Ward's going to be our quarterback next year. He's that style of player and like maybe a top 5 pick style of player depending on who you ask. So there's the challenge. It's right there, Duke. It ain't going to be easy, but you have the chance. You have the challenge. Are you up for it? And then will your coach be super jacked up that you exacted the revenge for him? I would love to have the conversation with Manny Diaz after a win, because he's going to say, oh, I wasn't thinking about that. I wasn't, but I would love to be able to look him in the eye and just see that smirk where he's going like, wasn't thinking about it at all as the final clock ticked down. As I looked around and walked to the visitors' locker room, wasn't thinking about that at all.